Welcome in, everyone. It is Sunday, and it is time for the writer's room. Yet another Sunday, but we got a new face here, and I hope you guys are familiar with this face. It's finally our editor in chief, Zach Vaughn. Zach, I'll start with you. How are you doing?
I'm pretty good. Excited to talk about the Bills again. Football season's finally back. And I know you're all probably wondering, who is this guy? He looks nothing like McDermott. Don't worry. It's
Yeah, you need the pilot goggles and the helmet and even the floppy hat. You need all of it in one. Maybe it'll be a little bit more familiar to the people that follow you on Twitter. Alec, how are you doing?
It's a great week. Football's back. Can't complain about that. Feels great.
Yeah, I got a little excited with the Hall of Fame game, and I really thought the Bills were on this weekend, and I got myself a little too hyped up, and now I got to wait until Friday. But, it is what it is. We all have to wait till Friday. I just kind of prematurely got excited about that. But it is what it is. We'll get football, at least Bills football, soon enough. Did you guys catch the Hall of Fame game? It was pretty bad, but it was just really boring. There wasn't a lot to watch. It's like Chase Claypool made a catch, got injured, and then it was okay.
That was the whole game.
All right, so this is what we're watching. Ty and Seki didn't do all that well, which kind of makes me feel better about moving on from him. But I don't know. It's football. It's back. We shouldn't really be complaining. I'm just getting more excited for the Bills and kind of itching for that game. But I really shouldn't gloss over this too quickly. I mean, the news that we all want to talk about is Josh Allen, and it's that mega extension. So we got to talk about it. I mean, I haven't had a chance to share my opinions on it, and I'm sure you guys haven't outside of, your tweets here and there. But Zach, I'll start with you since obviously it's been such a long time since we got you on the YouTube. What do you think of just generally, what do you think of the contract itself, extending him? Were you pro extending him now, pro, waiting a year? Where were you at before the extension, and how are you feeling now?
Well, I would say that I kind of didn't have a preference because I figured Brandon Beane was going to get it done regardless. So whether they got it done now, which they did, good, because that's one less thing to worry about going forward. Or if they had waited until next offseason, tried to give him another good year under his belt or something. But I'm just happy that they got it done.
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with, getting it done early. The thing, honestly, that you said that I didn't really think about this whole time is really getting it done early. It helps in terms of what the team is going to do throughout the season and even next off season. They can now start putting a plan in place because they know Josh's figures for the next 8 years. So it's easier to plan certain things from a general managing perspective. And I didn't really think about it that much. I was more thinking about it monetarily. What are the costs and benefits of doing it early versus late? But yeah, no, that's a good point. It is nice to just kind of get it out of the way. Alec, were you kind of in the same boat where you didn't really care so much? You just know that you want Josh Allen as a Buffalo Bill. Didn't really matter when.
Yeah, I was kind of in the same boat, but now looking at the numbers and everything, I'm really glad that we did pay him now because they still have to pay Lamar, Baker, and all that stuff. So I feel like the price would have only went up if we would have waited. So me getting the contract out of the way now, and we paid him a respectable amount of money. I think it was 100% worth it, obviously, but I think it's good to get out of the way.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point with Baker and Lamar, but we'll touch on that in a second. The thing I do want to touch on is how you said it's 100% worth it. And I agree with you. I think paying Josh Allen is 100% worth it. I think locking him up for 8 years is 100% worth it. The thing is, now, will he consistently play at a level that he's going to live up to that figure for the rest of those, the 8 years? Obviously, he's got, what he's being paid as a rookie this year, and then he's got the 5th-year option the year after that. And then it goes straight into it. So it's going to be interesting to see if he can really live up to that. But I think it's definitely worth, what we paid him. So Lamar and Baker. Zach, do you think Lamar is going to get more than Josh, or do you think it's just kind of trivial at this point? Oh, he has a MVP and that's that.
Well, I would say that I think Lamar will probably get a similar contract to Josh, probably in that same ballpark of a figure, like the average annual value, 43 to 45 mil. And it's because he had that MVP season. Like you talk about Mahomes, the reason he got that much was partly because he took a discount, to be honest, because he got Super Bowl MVP, league MVP, and the ring. That could have driven it up so much more than what the Chiefs gave Mahomes. As for Baker Mayfield, I don't know if he's quite there yet, but I'm sure the Browns will get an extension done, whether or not it's after the season. If he puts together an Allen-like season this year or something, is beyond me. But I will say that Baker Mayfield, it has impressed me, especially with how he reacted to Josh Allen's extension.
Yeah.
And he was just saying that he was happy for him. Like he didn't like bash anybody or do anything. Not that I'm saying he would, but I think that all three of them are going to get their banks. It's just whether it's a matter of when, not if.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And another thing that we didn't really touch on is the fact that we got this deal done before the TV money kicks in, which is, I think, after this season, maybe by the time for 2022 cap. Not exactly sure, but it's nice that we got Josh paid, just knowing that there's money coming in, but not necessarily knowing exactly how much money is coming in. And a lot of people are assuming that it'll make this contract even more of a discount for Josh Allen. But Alec, I wanted to ask you, I guess specifically since I asked Zach about Lamar, I'll ask you, do you think Baker's going to do you think he's going to touch 40 million? Like, because Deshaun Watson, obviously, we know what's going on with him right now. But, when he got signed, he was signed to the highest quarterback contract in the league at that time, I think in history, because it was before the Mahomes contract. And he got 39 million. I like Baker as well. I think he's a good quarterback. I just don't like when people say he's better than Josh. So I kind of like poo-poo Baker a little bit. Right. But he is good. He is a good quarterback and he's good for that team. I just don't know if he's worth $40 million. And if they wait, he might be $40 million. So I don't know. Do you think he'll break that threshold?
I don't know if he's going to break 40 million, but I completely agree with what you said. And if they wait, he might, because like you said, the TV money and all that stuff coming in, depending on how much more money they get. If they get a lot more money, then it's definitely a possibility that Baker touches 40 million. But before that, if it happens, I don't think he'll touch 40. I think he'll probably get mid to low 30s, but I think he'll still be getting a nice little check.
Yeah, I think that's a safe area. Somewhere in the mid 30s is what I would project for him. But obviously, a lot of it comes down to like the length of the contract will, inflate it or deflate it depending on how that goes. But the last thing I will talk about with Josh Allen and this new contract is the Super Bowl window, because a lot of people, they say, you were really only on your Super Bowl window when, or at least you have your best or greatest chance that window is most open when you're only paying your contract, pennies or whatever, their rookie contract. It's just nothing for what a quarterback could be worth if they're top 15 in the league and they're a rookie. They are just giving you unbelievable amounts of value. And that's what Josh Allen did this past year. And hopefully that's what he does this year before that fifth year option kicks in. So Zach, do you still think that the Super Bowl window is open, say in 2023, when this contract like fully kicks in? Do you still think that the window is wide open, or do you think it just shut just a tiny bit because we had to pay him more?
I think Super Bowl window is as open as Brandon Beane can keep it. Like, he's so good at maneuvering the cap that he could find ways to restructure deals. I'm sure there's something in Allen's contract where they probably have team outs or whatever after a few years down the line in case something happened, like they did with Tyrod Taylor when he had his big deal and they had the out in his contract where they could trade him or get rid of him. I'm sure Brandon Beane has done something like that. And also the fact that they built that culture where players now are willing to take discounts to stay here. Yeah. Like Isaiah McKenzie willingly well, whether or not he actually would take candy to be here and whatnot. And also, like was mentioned before, the TV money that's coming in a couple of years, the cap could also rise because of that. So if it rises to a significant extent, then the whole Josh Allen cap hit of 43 mil a year or whatever, that becomes a bit of a moot point because you'll have extra money to work with that way. And you think about all the veteran contracts that'll be coming off the books over the next couple of years. Mitch Morse, Jerry Hughes, Mario Addison, Vernon Butler. The list goes on and on. All these guys that people consider overpaid. A lot of those contracts are coming off the books in the next couple seasons. So by 2023, they will probably be in a good cap position. I think they continue to be a good cap position regardless of this extension right now.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you. Alec, are you in the same kind of boat where you're not too concerned with, the price tag on Allen and how that's going to affect the rest of the team?
Yeah, no, I'm personally not too worried about it. I think, like Zach said, there's room to be restructured there, and I believe that a lot of players are going to end up taking pay cuts depending on how this season actually goes. True. If it goes anything like it did last season, I believe that we're going to be a hot destination for free agents and other good players, and obviously for our own players to end up staying here.
Yeah.
So that's definitely a real possibility of us being able to get some cheap deals, some really good players on cheap deals to come help us win some Super Bowl rings.
The one point I want to add on to this is really how now that we've paid Josh, the page has turned completely. I think I saw this on Twitter. Sorry if I'm stealing this thought, but it is 100% true. I can't source it correctly, but now that we have signed Josh, the page turns and now it's on to scouting. It's about developing. It's about drafting well. It's about getting other players on rookie contracts to outperform that cost. Not now Josh Allen, which, we've kind of already got all the juice out of that fruit. And now we got to move on to the next one. And what I love is that the Bills already started doing it. Like they invested this offseason in 2 offensive tackles and 2 defensive linemen on the edge, which is particularly the more expensive parts of both sides of the ball on the offensive and defensive line. It's on the outsides. That's where the pressure comes from, and that's how you protect it. So yeah, it's nice to see if Spencer Brown can really live up to the hype, all the potential that he has. We'll definitely be reaping the benefits of that value. And maybe be able to move on from a Darrell Williams a few years down the road and cut some corners that way. Same way with, like you said, Zach, Mario Addison getting off the books, maybe a Jerry Hughes getting off the books. After this year, we have 2 rookies sliding right in, and that's just absolute value. That's what Brandon Beane's been doing this whole time, and I like that he's kind of ahead of the curve. And that's really what's so promising about this franchise and management itself. So before we move on from the Josh Allen extension, I wanted to make sure to plug our own BF writers. Michael LaFave went through and wrote the Josh Allen extension article. He compares it very well to other articles around in the NFL, and it's just a good article, like encapsulating the salary cap implications to it, a lot of the more nitty-gritty side of that. But also the football side of, Josh Allen on the field and how good he is to this franchise, things like that. So I want to make sure we got that in before we moved on. And we will be moving on to training camp. Hit us up with any questions you guys have about training camp in the chat. I'll try to make sure that I get them in here. But we got a little bit of plan so far on some talking points. And the first one, it's the hot button topic. And it's Jake Kumerow. Everyone's going cuckoo for Kumerow. It's just what's happening. I'm personally in the boat of him kind of being, at least at the moment, him being just another training camp darling that we're falling in love with a little bit too early. But he could absolutely prove me wrong. There's still 3 games of training camp to happen. So yeah, if he continues to do what he's doing, like he's a shoo-in to make this roster. I'm just not so sold yet. Alec, where do you stand on Jake Kumerow?
It's really early in the preseason and training camp to tell really a lot about what's actually going on. They just got full pads on, but I definitely like what I'm seeing. I think it's good. I think he's doing a lot of good things for the team. A lot of good things are being said about him from the players, the coaching staff, and all that stuff. I think we'll see a lot from him on Friday. We're going to get a lot of Jake Kumerow action going. So that tells us a lot of what's actually going to happen.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited to see him in the first game. Zach, what are your thoughts on Jake Kumerow and where he stands right now?
Well, if any of y'all follow me on Twitter, you already know I came out as a Jake Kumerow stan a bit. Like, obviously, that's not just because of what he's doing right now in shorts and a t-shirt. It's also because he did stuff in the past. Unlike, I know the other name that comes up in this sort of conversation is Isaiah Hodgins, but everyone talks about the potential of Isaiah Hodgins. Whereas with Kumerow, you can talk about what he's actually done in the past. And he's done it with Aaron Rodgers. He's done it with Josh Allen. And by doing it with Josh Allen, I'm, of course, referring to that Denver Broncos game when he had that touchdown. And some people may say, well, that was one play. But let's remember, it takes two to tango on a pass. You need someone to throw it in the right spot, and you need someone to catch it in the right spot. And the thing about Kumerow is everyone in the media keeps saying he's making great catches. Like against Tre'Davious White, working with the first team, he had those nice snags where Trey did everything right. It's just it was well executed by Allen and Kumerow. So and also the fact that he's getting first team reps at all should raise some things for people. But my main point too is obviously I don't think that he would necessarily leapfrog like Isaiah McKenzie or Emmanuel Sanders based on like 2 weeks in training camp and limited play last year. But he could win that wide receiver 6 job because of his special team experience and the experience that he has with Allen from last year into this year. And that's why I personally would put him a bit ahead of Isaiah Hodgins right now. But of course, if Isaiah Hodgins goes out in the preseason, shows he can do special teams as well, maybe that changes. But there's a lot left to be seen.
Well, perfect timing. Your boy Lettuce comes in and he wants to affirm Kumerow is wide receiver 6. Whether or not we keep 6 is up to question, but Kumerow gives us another large red zone target if we keep him. I definitely agree that like where we stand right now, he is wide receiver 6. Like all things being equal, if you're to say Kumerow and Hodgins are tied for wide receiver 6, you got to give the edge to Kumerow. The fact that he's playing with the ones, the fact that he's performed so well to this point, it'd be foolish to say that Hodgins is more likely to make the roster at this point with all the evidence we've been given. I'm going to continue to stay on the Hodgins train. My reason for this is really just I don't think the Bills stashed him last year on the IR strategically like they did to then just kind of be like, nah, we're done with you. We'll see if we can get you on the practice squad. I know there's a lot of people that are adamant that he will be untouched if he goes to waivers. Like I've seen people like, oh, you're stupid. You think he'll get claimed? And I see other people saying like, I think he's going to get claimed. Like he was in a good wide receiver draft class and, you know, a year went by and the Bills showed that they liked him. Bless you, Alec.
Thank you.
But no, I'm very indifferent on this at the moment. And this goes back to, let me grab it real quick, what Chris asked us. And he asked, what do you guys value more when deciding on roster spots? What happens in camp or what happens in preseason games? And I think that's really where I stand right now. I stand on the side of preseason games being more influential in terms of who's going to get the final spots rather than camp performances, because you're practicing against guys you know, people whose like tendencies you go up against every day. Like it's easier to win against your own teammates in that kind of psychological way. And it's nice to see guys compete in a game setting. So like if someone has an absolutely terrible camp and plays well in preseason games, it kind of brings them back to middle. I'm not going to say like just because they did well in preseason games, everything from camp is diminished, but I value preseason games more. And that's why I'm kind of like holding on to the Hodgins hope. But Kumerow is definitely in the lead right now, and I cannot deny that. But yeah, Zach, you actually made a very good point about how, like, if he's going to make this roster, like, he's probably not going to usurp the wide receiver 5 spot. Like, if he gets to wide receiver 5, that's probably his cap, would you say?
Yeah, I would say, because realistically, of course, you got Diggs, Beasley, Gabriel Davis, Emmanuel Sanders. Again, not in that particular order, but they're the top 4. Isaiah McKenzie is the next man up in that. He had a lot more production, and he's done really well in the much to Ryan Sullivan's chagrin. Isaiah McKenzie has done well so far in training camp, which I'm not surprised by. The Bills have a lot of faith in him. He has proven over the past 3 or so years that he's been here that he can do the job. And I think going back to Kumerow, somebody did make this comment, and it's a perfect one, is that Kumerow is, as a gunner, provides better value to the Bills offensively than Taiwan Jones would as a gunner and a depth running back. Like, if you keep Kumerow, you could let Taiwan Jones walk and keep a 4th running back and actually have a legit by committee. Because last year, how many times did we enter a game with 3 active running backs, one of which Taiwan Jones, and you thought, well, what are we going to do if one of these guys go down? Taiwan Jones is not an offensive threat. So,
no, that's a really good point. That is a really good point. I've been tinkering with the roster in a lot of different ways to see how, I mean, I don't want to say like get Taiwan Jones off the roster because he is a great gunner, but I want someone who's a good gunner that can also produce on their side of the ball. Because we have Saron Neal, and he does his best, and it sounds like he's getting better on the defensive side of the ball, but like he's primarily been a gunner to this point. And I don't want both my gunners to be only gunners, and that's that. I'd like at least one of them to do something on their side of the ball. So, yeah, it'd be cool if Kumerow is one of them because, yeah, if there's an injury to that wide receiver core, he's shown so far that he could come in and have some meaningful snaps and actually do something with them. So that's, I guess you're right. That is another way to shuffle around these roster spots. John DeMarchi comes in with Super Chat. Thank you, John. Bills lost 4 games last year, all 4 because no pass rush when it mattered. Tennessee, KC, Arizona, and KC again. How do Groot and Boogie and Obata look? I mean, I've heard nothing but great things about Groot. I've been following a lot of Matt Perino stuff, and he's been talking about how, like, he doesn't want to write about him because it's, like, so painfully obvious to write about the number 1 overall draft pick, but he keeps having to write about it, or not overall, but number 1 Bills draft pick. And then Boogie obviously had that splash play with the tipped pass, then interception, return for touchdown. So I'd say so far it sounds like Groot is doing more of the consistent work. He's showing like a lot of consistent like growth, and Boogie's just kind of flashing well. And then Obata has also been a part of the more recent reports. I feel like he's took a little bit to come on in the first week, but since then he's been fairly consistent, and he's been opening some eyes to why the Bills brought him here. Alec, I'll start with you. How do you feel about the new look defensive line?
I love it personally. I've seen a lot of Greg Rousseau sacks in my Twitter feed, which is great to see. He loved to see the young guys creating pressure. Obviously, like you said, you saw the big splash plays from Boogie, and all like you said, all the Obata stuff that's coming out right now all looks super positive. He's getting his feet back underneath him. He's doing really well at camp. A lot of good pass rush moves, and I think it's going to help out the younger guys to see guys like him working all these pass rush moves that they've worked over the years. Yeah,
absolutely. It's definitely encouraging to see how they're all taking to Coach Washington. They've all spoke well of him. At least the rookies have, and I imagine the vets are anyways. But Zach, I want to ask you, because I haven't really gotten to talk to you about either of the draft picks since the draft itself, and I don't even remember if I got to talk to you about Obata. But yeah, how do you feel about the new look offensive line? What do you think is going to change this year? Or defensive line, excuse me.
Well, the offensive line will be changing in the next couple years with our draft picks, which everyone knows how I feel about Spencer Brown versus like Quinn Miners and how I view them both in a very similar light. I'm sure Spencer Brown will be great when his time comes, which unfortunately Pierre is not now. Anyways, getting back to the original question at hand about the defensive line, again, I was one of those many Bills fans who was originally befuddled by drafting edge rushers back-to-back picks, but I understand the logic. Like we were talking about with the Josh Allen extension, cap-wise, you're setting yourself up for a cheap, affordable rotation for the next 3 to 4 years because you have Epinesa, Groot, Boogie. Great nicknames for the last two, by the way.
Yeah.
Boogie, can't wait to hear that a lot.
I know, right?
And also, I believe it was Dawn Keith had a comment earlier talking about how she thinks the NFL is getting away from special team only players, which does bring me to Bam Johnson. Again, another great nickname, and I do really like him. And I know that Heath Farwell had nothing but glowing review of his play and how all the opposing coaches always bring him up. But has he done enough on the defensive side of the ball to stick around in this deep core? Because we were even talking about in the Buffalo Fanatics group chat last night, family chat, about possibly do the Bills keep 7 defensive ends and only 3 defensive tackles? I don't see that happening. I think at most it's 6 so that you have 3 full lines for a rotation. But who's going to be that 6th guy? Obata, I don't know much about him. I just know that he has the versatility that everyone expected from Quentin Jefferson. And if Starr didn't opt out last year, Jefferson probably would have been used that way.
Right.
I don't know much about him, but that's why I can't wait for the preseason games. I want to see him a bit more. And obviously, like you were saying, we're hearing glowing reviews about Boogie and Groot, which is great because your top 2 picks are doing well in camp and they're getting noticed by everyone. And that's why and going back to my point about Bam Johnson, if he can't beat out anyone in the preseason or if he can't show anything on defensive side, what's to stop them from just using Rousseau in his stead on special teams? He has similar length. You could just put him in there, and if he gives either the same type of production or even maybe a marginal downgrade, I think he beats out. I think Bam Johnson ends up on the practice squad or traded because you got to prove yourself on defense too. It's not all about special teams. It's not all about the nostalgia. If it was about keeping the guys you're comfortable with, they never would have brought in Mitch Trubisky to be Allen's backup. They would have kept Matt Barkley. They have shown they're willing to move on if they think it's an improvement. And that's why I'm also on that board about Tywan Jones possibly being shipped out in favor of Antonio Williams, who brings more of an offensive threat. And I know I keep circling back to different things, but it seems like a similar theme, though, where it's like improvement, got to get better on the quality. It's very contested right now everywhere on the roster. But you just got to show out and show that you're versatile in multiple ways, and that includes special teams and defense, or special teams and offense, or whatever the position requires. So that's my thought on that.
I'll finish up the thought on the defensive line I guess I'll ask you guys where you stand on number keeping, because you did touch it a little bit. Really, since the whole 7 defensive ends and 3 defensive tackles has come up. I think it was by Matt Perino, kind of fidgeted with it the other day. And I think even he's double backed on it. And really the big problem for me is I don't want to get rid of, that meat on the inside. We need those bigger guys on the inside. We missed Starr last year. Apparently he's looking a little slimmer this year too. That Twitter video wasn't the only thing. Apparently people who went to see him live thought that he looked a little bit slimmer. We need all the beef we can get in the middle of our defensive line. I don't want to go into the season with only 3. I'm oddly in the boat where I don't know if Daryl Johnson would clear waivers the way apparently other teams talk about him and his special teams ability. So I'm starting to get into the boat where I want 11 defensive linemen to make the active roster, which is absolutely stupid. But that's where I am. I don't want to see any of these guys go. Am I crazy, Alec? Should we only be keeping like 9 or 10?
I think 10 is the precise number. I think that's the perfect number to keep. I think we do 6 and 4, like Zach said, keep 4 defensive tackles and 6 defensive ends. For defensive tackles, they're big guys. They definitely need a little bit more of a rotation than just 3 people. You need to keep them fresh, keep fresh legs in there. So I definitely think we need to keep at least 4.
I'm with you, man. I just I don't want to see Daryl Johnson go. I don't. And I'm at this point, I feel like he's the one, on the outside looking in. I mean, I like what I see from Obata, but I don't think they're going to sign someone like that and then move on from him so quickly. Maybe if Daryl Johnson does well, I got to say I'm really excited to see what he's going to do in the preseason outside of just special team stuff. I want to see what he does on defense. Mm-hmm. If he does well on defense, could Obata be a trade target, Zach?
Actually, I did touch on this a couple months ago when I did my premature roster projection. And again, at the time, it was more because I didn't know anything about him. But yeah, he could be a trade target. I think any of the defensive ends that could be considered expendable for the Bills, and even at other positions too, they could be optimal trade targets for other teams come cut down time, because the Bills roster is just so loaded. It's stacked like flapjacks, let's just say. Like, it's just like, yeah, like Obata could be useful to a team like Atlanta, maybe Dallas, a team that struggled with pass rush, team that could use some edge rushers. And you could even say the same thing about maybe Daryl Johnson. Should he be the odd man out, he could be a good compensatory trade target for Bean to get rid of.
Yeah, it would. I mean, obviously at this point, like we said, the roster is so good. We're going to be churning talent like that. We got to find a way to get something back for even identifying that talent and getting them on the roster in the first place. So yeah, that's one way to do it. I don't really have a preference on which one I want to see here and which one I want to see go. It's just a tough decision. I'm glad I'm not the one making it. We will transition on now to Isaiah McKenzie, and your boy Lettuce comes in and says, I think IMAC is good for wide receiver 5. He's a jet sweep specialist, and I believe he's our returner. And his press conference and Heath Farwell's press conference said it all about where he stands as a returner in that battle. And it seems like he's just the front runner. Like there's no one really challenging him for it at this moment, and he is the front runner for it. But I really want to ask you guys about something else, because I feel like we kind of all expected him to be the front runner. It was just like, was he going to follow through with those expectations? So now what I want to ask you is something that we didn't really expect from McKenzie, and it seems like he's doing some really solid work from the slot, not as that gadget guy, but as a true slot receiver, like learning something from Beasley over the past, 2 years since 2019. It's really encouraging to hear those kind of reports. So what I'll ask you guys is he just a return specialist, gadget guy, destined to be wide receiver 4 as his cap, absolute cap? Or can he challenge Sanders and Beasley for snaps at that slot position? Alec, I'll start with you.
This season, I think it's definitely more of just a return specialist role and a wide receiver 5 and a gadget guy. But in the up-and-coming seasons, I definitely could see Isaiah McKenzie becoming a wide receiver 3 or 4 and getting serious time and getting serious catches and targets and making a difference on the offense.
So, Zach, I'll frame it to you in a way where you can dunk on our buddy Ryan, because I thought when we were drafting Marquez Stevenson, I thought he was going to be exactly what Alec just described. Someone, we're going to turn the page on McKenzie. We're going to find our returner, our gadget guy, and our future slot guy, all 3 in one with a draft pick in those mid to late round areas. We picked one. My buddy Randy in the chat, I think he goes by Carl now. He and I and Judge and Tilt, we were all fantasizing over Shi Smith. He went literally the pick after to the Panthers, and we drafted Marquez Stevenson instead. And he's like, what has he done so far? Only negative reviews at this point, and it's very disappointing to hear. So do you think we're shutting the door on what Stevenson can be too early, or are you going to dunk on Ryan, Zach?
Well, I will do this in two ways. One, I should mention too, when I did my roster projection, I thought the Bills could possibly keep both McKenzie and Stevenson.
Same.
But at the very least, as long as Stevenson is in that receiver room, I think he serves as McKenzie's understudy. Like, should he price himself out of Buffalo's range in the future? Like, if he does another great year all around and adds in a great year as a return man, his market could skyrocket. And what better than to have a cheap rookie contract on your books, have Stevenson there, let him develop into the role. And I will also say that I think, obviously, 2 weeks in shorts and a helmet doesn't necessarily, again, mean as much as Kendall has mentioned before. If we get into preseason games and you see Stevenson struggling, returning the ball or whatever, then that will be a different thing. So I'm not going to necessarily dunk fully on Ryan for thinking that that Stevenson would beat out Isaiah McKenzie. I will dunk on him for doubting Isaiah McKenzie, though, because
that's fair.
Because he did prove himself last year, and he showed those flashes on offense last year. That's why he had the 8 touchdowns. That's why he had all those highlight plays last year on offense. And again, to circle back to my point earlier, McKenzie was proving himself on offense in multiple ways. He also showed he can throw the ball, which is great considering Dable likes to pull those backyard plays out of his pocket. And you even add the fact that he does have return experience. And I'm not just talking about the one against Miami, as great as that was. Yeah. And as funny as it is that he refers to Matt Hawkins' son because of it. But I think it is McKenzie's job to lose for the return position this year. And I think going forward, I do believe that McKenzie could see a bigger role in the offense as well. Even when you think about, like, Cole Beasley is getting up there in age, his contract is coming up in a couple of years. I believe that Isaiah McKenzie can be as good as he wants to be. I think every player has the ability to be as great as they want to be. And I know that's going to sound like a cop-out answer, but it's true. It's about putting the work in. And Isaiah McKenzie is doing that. I'm sure Stevenson, with a little refinement and some time under his belt, I think at this point, maybe he does make the practice squad and still serves as Isaiah McKenzie's understudy, just not on the active roster. And they use that roster spot for, like, Jake Kumerow, get him as the wide receiver 6. So I think Isaiah McKenzie's job to lose. Stevenson will probably be on the Bills one way or the other, but it's just more likely on the practice squad at this point.
Right. I think you brought up a good point with, like, where McKenzie stands right now relative to the wide receiver room. And I know he's only on a 1-year deal, similar to Sanders. And then Beasley's kind of getting up there in age, like a Sanders. But Beasley has more than 1 year remaining on his contract in Buffalo. However, because of Beasley and Sanders being old and one being on a 1-year contract, one having, I think, 2 years left, and because McKenzie's only 25, maybe they're going to see how much they can get out of McKenzie. Like, maybe they really give him all the opportunities they possibly can. Like, if a Beasley is tired, maybe they go to McKenzie in the slot instead of putting Sanders in the slot. You know, maybe they take Davis off the field, put Sanders as the other perimeter and McKenzie in the slot. Maybe they really give McKenzie all the opportunities he can to show that he's going to be the future slot guy for this offense and not just a gadget guy for this offense. So maybe that's what's going to happen moving forward with Isaiah McKenzie. Maybe not. Time will tell. Honestly, can't wait for this preseason really to see how these guys are going to perform. 2 things. First thing, I don't know how facetious this comment is or if he's being literal and he doesn't know how disappointing Marquez has been so far, but I feel like he's referring to Ryan and saying maybe we should tag Stevenson in a bunch of tweets and say how bad he's doing, and maybe we'll motivate him to be a beast, kind of the way McKenzie has been recently. Josh Clark, good on you if you're being facetious and you're referring to Ryan's tweets dunking on McKenzie. Otherwise, if you haven't seen, Stevenson has been a little bit underwhelming with some, muffed punts and other things like that. Not really living up to some of the hype as a receiver. So yeah, I don't know how you're going about it, so I figured I'd answer it both ways. And then secondly, thank you, John, for coming in. I see you just giving all the love. I appreciate it. All three are great tonight. But I want to give a public shout out to humble, understated Kendall Mursky. Kid is quiet storm and a force. Well done. Thank you, John. I appreciate it, especially coming from you. I know you're a smart guy, so I appreciate that. Let's move on, though, to our next topic. Oh, that's funny. Kendall and Edmonds will always be still so young in my book. You know what? Honestly, I didn't put this in here, but let's talk about it. There hasn't been a lot on the linebackers. I know you guys aren't prepared to talk about this because I didn't have this on our talking points, but there really hasn't been a lot on our linebackers. I heard Edmonds had like one good day. I think in the past like 3 days specifically, he had a good day, standout day. And then I heard Tyrell Dodson was looking pretty good, and Tyrell Adams was taking a bit to kind of fit into this defense. Alec, I'll start with you if you've heard anything different or if you have any thoughts to share on, battles in the linebacker room. Yeah, what are your thoughts on the linebackers right now?
I want to say Edmonds' best day was Thursday at camp.
What's today? Yeah, that's probably right.
Yeah, and he had a really great day. They said he was flying around the field, moving all over the place, and you love to hear that, playing sideline to sideline, coming downhill. That's the thing I really like to hear is him coming downhill and filling holes. Yeah. That's what I feel like has been his main problem is actually coming downhill and meeting running backs in the hole and at the line. So it's good to see that he's doing that. Yeah, like you said, not much came out about the linebackers. I also heard that Medikevich had a good day on, I want to say it was Thursday or Wednesday. It was either Wednesday or Thursday. I can't remember. But I heard he was making big plays in the run game too.
Yeah, exactly. That was actually the thing that I took from it. I'm glad you brought it up because I failed to mention it before. Apparently he looked good on defense. And apparently this defensive staff actually likes him as a true linebacker, not just as a special teamer. Obviously, we know how good he is as a special teamer, and that's why he's getting the money that he's getting. He even took a pay cut for this team, but he's still making a decent penny. But yeah, it's very encouraging to hear that he might actually give us some good snaps as a backup linebacker if need be. So yeah, that's encouraging. Zach, do you have any thoughts on the linebacker position before I move on here?
I honestly think the only locks so far at that position are Edmonds, Milano, and Klein. Everything else is just up in the air because obviously with Klein, he wouldn't be a lock if he didn't have that big cap hit.
Yes.
But also I do think that McDermott and Frazier do value him as that third linebacker, the next man up. He started out terrible, and I know Bills Mafia laid into him, but then he got comfortable in the system. He showed up. He made big plays, got like 5.5 sacks in like a 3-week span, and actually ended up tied for the team lead, I think, in sacks. And that was insane. That came in 2 or 3 games.
Yeah.
And it was against Russell Wilson, Justin Herbert. It was insane. I think that I don't know whether or not he probably won't do as well this year. I don't see him having that as big of a role. Hopefully Milano and Edmonds stay healthy so we don't have to find out. But as for the depth guys, again, if Medikevich can prove himself as being a defensive threat as well as a special team ace, then he'll make the roster. Yeah. Dodson, I liked what I saw from him in that limited role last year. I think he has potential. He could very well come back again this year. I think ultimately it will depend on whether they keep 5 or 6 on the roster, because I would say ideally you'd want a backup at every position. You would want you have Klein, Edmonds, Milano. You'd want their backups too.
Mm-hmm.
So it would probably comes down to Tyrell Adams, Andre Smith, Markel Lee. I don't know much about him. I feel like Adams might have the leg up over him because I think he has inside and outside linebacker experience, which positional versatility could play a big factor in this.
That's actually why I think Dodson's a little bit more safe. I think he has the athleticism to play outside, but he also has kind of like those instincts and run stopping ability to play inside. I just like me some Tyrell Dodson. I really hope he makes the roster. I really do. All right, we'll move on from the linebackers and we'll get into everyone's favorite enigma, and that's Dawson Knox. Zach, I'll start with you. How much more patience do you have for Dawson Knox?
I said late last season when I wrote that piece about him and comparing him to Pete Metzelaars, how they had a similar storyline going into the NFL. Both transitioned from quarterback to tight end in college. The main difference being is that Dawson Knox's college didn't really use two tight end system. They didn't use them that much because they had Evan Ingram. And I know people will say, oh, that's an excuse. But everyone agrees tight end's one of the longest developing positions. Like, it usually takes 2 to 3 years to get acclimated to the pro level. And I've been saying since late last year, I will wait and pass judgment until after year 3. I still stand by that. I think we've seen the flashes. We've seen him made the spectacular catches. Obviously, his main issue is just making the easy catches.
Yeah.
Which, obviously, we're entering year 3 again. If he does struggle in the first half of the season, maybe I will change my tune a bit. Because obviously, game day is different than analyst me in the off season.
Yeah.
Because, once you see him drop that easy pass, you're like, really?
Yeah.
It's just, you get irritated. But as of right now, I stand by it. One more year, and then you make the decision next off season, next preseason, whether or not you make another move at the position.
Your game day Zach versus analyst Zach sounded like me when I was reading on Twitter that he had another drop in camp, and like his first rep in camp was a drop. Like, those are the things I was just like, you're kidding me. Like, this guy, I gave him so much love this offseason. I got off the Zach Ertz train. I was like, this is our guy. Develop him. We got it. And then like this happens, and it's just like, oh my God. I'll double down on what you said. I'll double down on what you said about his time at Ole Miss. I said this on the most recent Air Raid Hour. He had Evan Ingram in front of him, and then when he didn't have Evan Ingram in front of him, the wide receivers on that team were DK Metcalf and A.J. Brown. I'm not targeting the tight end that much if I have DK Metcalf and A.J. Brown on the outside. It's just, that's not where my offense is flowing. I think that statement is evident enough to his usage in college. I hope that doesn't feel like an excuse, because that's just a truth. It's just a truth. DK Metcalf and AJ Brown are better than Dawson Knox, especially one who's 1 or 2 years into knowing the position at all. So I'll move on to you, Alec, and you feel with Dawson Knox, a riddle wrapped in mystery inside an enigma. How do you feel about it, Alec?
I think preseason will tell us a lot. I think in-game reps are a lot different than in-practice reps. And I think it's not good that he's dropping in-practice reps, obviously, but I think that in-game, if he can manage to keep his hands on the ball and keep making moves downfield, because after he gets the catch, he's great in the open field. He's got a strong arm. He's just hard to bring down. So I think we just definitely need to give him a shot. He has so much potential to be a great tight end, like a Kittle or a Kelsey or a Waller, where he's exclusively a receiving tight end and pretty much another receiver on the field at all times. And with that big playability, I think you definitely need to keep giving him a shot.
Yeah, I hope we see a lot more of this year, not traditional fullback, but I hope we see a lot of him as that kind of halfback role where he's detached from the offensive line. playing just a tad bit more in the backfield, like maybe a foot or two behind the tackle instead of, fully attached to that offensive line. And we saw that a little bit last year. They kind of moved him around that way across the formation to kind of diagnose pre-snap, like who's guarding him, make it easier for Josh, but then also easy for Dawson to get some yards after the catch. And they would just kind of like leak him out into the flats. I hope they do a lot more of that this season. And it's funny because this goes exactly against what Lone Wolf is saying. Quit throwing Knox easy ones, problem solved. And like, that's literally what I hope they do though. Like, I hope they give him more easy ones, because it's just like, if we can get him open in the flats on those like rollout plays, if we run more 12 personnel with him and Hollister, and one's a ploy and one's actually leaking out into the flats. We saw it a little bit, I think, in that the Colts playoff game, that little RPO touchdown, little designed plays to manufacture him touches at or near the line of scrimmage is, in my opinion, the best way to kind of get his confidence up. And then we saw like the video of him catching that touchdown in the back of the end zone earlier from training camp. And it's like, that's one of those hard ones where I feel like, because it's so difficult, he's just not even in his head to think about it, and he just makes the play. Yeah. So the dude's an enigma. Like, no one knows what's going on with him. We all know he's uber athletic. It's just up to him to figure it out to this point, and hopefully he will develop into at least a good average tight end. I think, actually, you know what? I'll put the nail in the coffin here. This is my last thought on Dawson Knox. I think a lot of us are expecting him to be this isn't exactly what she's saying, but a Hawkinson or a Kittle or a Waller or anyone in that stratosphere of tight end. I don't think Dawson Knox is going, or at least I don't think that's fair to expect that of Dawson Knox. If he becomes that, I think that's great, and I think he has the potential to become that, but I don't think that's what we should be expecting from him. He was a third-round draft pick. Yes, we traded up for him, but he was a third-round draft pick. The same way we don't expect Zach Moss or Devin Singletary to be Saquon Barkley, we shouldn't expect Dawson Knox to be George Kittle, Darren Waller, Travis Kelce. I think most of them actually probably weren't even first-round picks, now that I'm thinking about it, those tight ends. But the point is, tight ends take a long time to develop, like you said, Zach. So time will tell. Let's be a little bit more patient. I know I led this off saying, how much more patience do you have? But the point I'm trying to make is we just have to be a little bit more patient. It's just training camp. Let's give it some time.
And if not, Jacob Hollister's right in the wings. And he's done some good stuff with Russell Wilson and Josh Allen.
Yeah.
He had that connection in Wyoming. So I think that Knox and Hollister are a pretty good tight end duo.
Yeah.
But, if Knox should falter or not live up to the expectation, I think Hollister could step in, be that next man up.
Yeah, 100%. That there's a reason they brought him in here, play that Tyler Kroft kind of role and keep, competing with Dawson Knox to try and make Knox as good as he can be. And if Knox falters at any point, yeah, like you said, Hollister's right there waiting. I 100% agree. So we'll move on to our last position, unless you guys have any others after this. And it's CB2. Unfortunately, there's not much of a talking point here. And the question I'll ask you guys is really like, did we overdo it with Dane? Did we overhype Dane because of, 50 snaps that he had in 2020? Zach, how do you feel about Dane Jackson, or do you still feel good about Dane Jackson despite him not being the front runner for this competition?
I'm going to answer that question in my usual pedantic way on Twitter. Yes, because I think we did, as Bills Mafia, we do tend to overhype some players based on limited stuff. I mean, you talk about Antonio Williams.
Yeah.
I'm blanking on the other person we are just
Kumerow, Christian Wade,
maybe.
Duke Williams.
Yeah, exactly. The list goes on and on. But yeah, I mean, Dane Jackson, though, the reason that we overhype him is we saw what he did in those limited snaps, the aggression, the aggressiveness that is a complete 180 from Levi Wallace, the instinct that he has that killer, sort of a killer instinct. And you think about what he did to DeAndre Hopkins in that Arizona game.
Yeah.
Not many corners can do that, let alone a 7th-round rookie who was called up from the practice squad. And he did that. He shut him down on those couple of reps he had against him.
Mm-hmm.
So he has the potential.
Right.
That being said, death, taxes, and Levi Wallace as CB2 in a McDermott defense. I mean, Levi, I've consistently defended him with this. I know a lot of people are defending him with this argument. He's not that bad a corner. When you see his game film, you think, oh, the bad stuff is really bad, but he also does pretty well. He's above average. He had a lower passer rating against last year than Marcus Lattimore, Patrick Peterson, Richard Sherman. I continually bring this up every time someone tries to bash Levi Wallace for his play last year, because it's true that he's an above average corner to average. He's solid. He's a solid CB2. Obviously, if you can find an upgrade, you got to go with the upgrade.
Of course.
If Dane Jackson can develop into that upgrade, that'd be fantastic, because I would love to see how Dane and Trey White do as a cornerback duo on a consistent basis. But right now, Levi is the best option they have opposite Trey because he has the experience. And you know how McDermott likes to start his veterans, the guys who are in his system, the guy he knows can do the job. And I know Levi's only been in the league for like 3 years, but he has 3 years of starting experience. So that should count for something. I think maybe it ends up being Levi starts the season as CB2, but if he struggles a bit, they will probably try to rotate Dane Jackson in.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe during the season, Dane Jackson overtakes him for the job. But as of week 1, I think it's Levi's job to lose.
I got 2 thoughts before I move this on to Alec. And my first thought is I liked how you used the Cardinals game and how he played against DeAndre Hopkins. Like, he had an end zone pass breakup, which was huge and definitely opened a lot of eyes. The other one for me was that like crackdown tackle on DK Metcalf on like a quick in-breaking route against the Seahawks. That was one where I was like, this guy kind of reminds me of Teron Johnson. He's just like, he's going to get his nose dirty and he doesn't even care. He's going to play aggressive. And I like that. I really do. We know that the McDermott defense really likes physicality and aggressiveness, not necessarily in how they attack the ball in the air, but you know, they're a little bit more conservative in that realm, but they're really aggressive when it comes to run support once it's identified, tackling once it's in their area. They really like those traits. And then to Levi, this is how I'll turn it over to you, Alec. Let me know if I'm wrong here, but I feel like Levi reminds me of an offensive lineman. You don't notice him until he messes up. And I feel like that's Levi like to a T.
Yeah, completely agree. His errors are very blaring and they're very obvious.
Yeah.
But there aren't that many like blaring obvious errors.
Right.
But when it does happen, you definitely notice.
You notice it and you pick on him, and it's not fair. Are you still like okay though with the Dane Jackson hype at this point? You're still like, yeah, all right. If he's depth, like cool, I still like him. Is that where you stand?
I still love him. I think the Aaron Donald workout thing, where Donald said that he helps him work harder than he's worked with anybody ever. I think that's a huge thing. He's willing to put in the work, put in the time, put in the effort to actually get better. He's working with high-level NFL players that are going to put him through good training regimens. I think that's huge. And then, like you said, the small sample size, but still looked very good on film in the games that he got into last year.
100%. I'm excited for preseason. I really can't wait for this first game. Who's it against? Is it the Lions?
Yeah.
Oh boy. I'm curious, like, you know, their whole culture is obviously changing with the new head coach, Jared Goff. I don't even think they have wide receivers. I don't know what the hell they're doing over there in Detroit. I love their draft. They got Ali McNeil. Who else? They got Melifonwu, right?
Yeah.
Who'd you say, Alec?
Yeah, I was about to say Sewell.
Okay. Yeah, they did get Sewell, and that was a very good pick for them because he fell to them. Freaking Bengals, idiots.
You have to take a tackle there. You have to take a tackle there.
I don't get it. I
gotta
don't
bite those
understand.
kneecaps.
Yeah, apparently. All right, so before we transition into a quick Q&A, I got to remind you guys that the official VPN of Buffalo Fanatics is NordVPN. We just partnered with them. You can get a nice little discount at thebfvpn.com. See it right here on your screen, 70% off the second or the 2 years. The first month is free, and it's only $3.71 a month. If you guys don't know what a VPN is, it's essentially something that can, first off, safely and in a safe way and secure you in all of your internet traffic, keep you more safe in that way, some security. But also, if you ever want to kind of move your IP address, if there's ever a reason that you might want to be in Buffalo and you're not in Buffalo, you can get your internet connection to Buffalo. It's kind of a slick way to stream some sports if you are living in Buffalo, but you can't watch the Buffalo game because it's in market and you want to go out of market. Put your IP address over to California and you can watch your Bills game on Sunday Ticket because it's out of market technically because you're in California. So that's one thing you can do with VPN, but I'm not necessarily sure I'm supposed to be telling people to do that. The real point here is that you can be safe and secure while you're online using your interwebs. But if you guys have any questions, let us know and we will be sure to answer them. Do you guys have any thoughts though in terms of training camp roundup? What I will do is I will toss Alec and my most recent articles in the chat because we both did a little recap of what we've recently been reading from training camp. But are there any position groups you guys want to talk about? Any players you guys want to talk about? That goes for you guys in the chat too. But yeah, Alec and Zach, you guys got anything specific you want to talk about?
Personally, no, I don't. I think we touched on pretty much all the really big position groups. So I think
I would say the only ones I can really think of are Justin Zimmer, who Leslie Frazier has come out and said that he's not forgotten in his eyes. And I think everyone keeps forgetting about him and that he should make this team and he will make this team because let's remember the only reason they signed him last year to the active roster was because another team was going to sign him. So he will not clear waivers again. He will not make the practice squad. And Justin Zimmer is just a ball. He is a baller.
Yeah.
And I mean that in the most flattering sense for a defensive lineman. Like he's one of those guys. He's a grinder. I think he makes a legit case for that defensive tackle 4 position. Who knows? Maybe he beats out Harrison Phillips.
No, God. No,
Maybe.
don't say that. No.
I said maybe.
We are firmly here anti Vernon Butler and pro Harrison Phillips.
100%.
Right? Yeah. Okay, good.
100%.
I didn't want to make sure I was saying something wrong in terms of what you thought, Alec. But we've been here for a month and a half now, just kind of speaking up Harrison Phillips, and we haven't really said anything too nice about Vernon Butler. So
I didn't mention Butler because I don't know if the cap would allow him to be cut.
So I'll look it up right now just so I can get the most official numbers according to overthecap.com. It's like 3.2 million, I think, in dead cap. When you compare that to what it would cut or what it would cost to cut Mario Addison, that was, what is that, like 6 or 8 million in dead cap, something like that. Like that's not something I can envision Brandon Beane doing. At that point, it's like, just take the labor. It's expensive labor, but you might as well take it instead of paying it and not getting that labor. So
right.
In the instance of Vernon Butler, it is $2 million post June 1st cut. It is $2 million. Which I know. Yeah, I know. I just said $2 million like pennies. It's football, guys. Like Josh Allen just got $150 million guaranteed. Like $2 million is pennies to these guys. But yeah, so I think you actually do get some money, Lone Wolf. I don't think you gain $2 million. I think we still have to pay him $2 million, but I think we technically save like 1.2 by cutting him. So it offsets a little bit. Like if there wasn't any dead cap, we would be saving 3.2, but because there's dead cap and he restructured this offseason, he's guaranteed to get $2 million this season at the very least. So in my eyes, although he's someone that restructured and he has dead cap tied to him, him and like Medikevich are probably the two guys that I could see actually getting cut this preseason, despite restructuring, just because I think it's cheap enough. Whereas like a Mitch Morse, it doesn't make sense to cut your starting center, or Mario Addison. Like it could make sense if, obviously we've heard Groot and Boogie are great. We love Daryl Johnson. F.A. Obata's been doing well, but $6 to $8 million is a lot. And what he's going to do for those young guys, you guys saw the video of Mario Addison, like speaking on those guys, right? Or coaching them on the sideline. And then did you guys see his press conference too?
Great praise.
Right?
Nothing
like
the highest praise.
That's exactly, I mean, obviously I think we can all agree that he's probably being overpaid for what he's doing on the field. Mm-hmm. But when you put it together, like what he's going to do as a mentor for these young guys and what he does on the field, I think it's worth it. I do. I didn't think that like 3 or 4 months ago, but after that presser, I feel a lot better about paying him the money that we're paying him. It's nice to see our young guys welcomed in, with open arms, especially in a room like that, no egos, anything like that. It's going to be great to get Jerry Hughes back in the room with them, though. I hope he recovers quickly. All right, so I think that does it for us. Let me just check to see if there are any questions. I'll click this one right here. Obata and Daryl Johnson both making the 53-man. You guys think that's possible, or is my 11 defensive linemen just out the window?
I mean, personally, I don't think they both can make the roster. I think this roster is way too hard to make. There's way too many good players at other positions. I don't think we can actually physically afford to keep 11 defensive linemen.
Yeah, exactly. Same boat. Yeah,
I agree. It's going to be 10. And again, how you do the 10, I think last year, I believe it was 5 and 5 because they had Trent Murphy as a fifth defensive end. And then they had I think Zimmer or someone else as a fifth defensive tackle. It might have actually ended up being Zimmer. But I think this year it'll be 6 and 4 because you have the 4 defensive tackles and then you have 3 full edge rusher rotations. But also with the versatility that like Basham, Rousseau, Obata could give, that may even expand your depth a little bit. And then you could be more creative on the defensive line, give all these mismatches, confuse offensive linemen. Yeah. I think Leslie Frazier and McDermott will just look at whichever 10 guys they keep, and they're going to be licking their chops, just figuring out ways to get creative, how Dable gets creative with the passing plays on offense. And it's going to be wonderful to see. If you see Basham line up on the edge one play, and then you see him in the middle next to Oliver the next, I think it's going to be fun to see.
We've definitely talked about that a few times, how excited we are, Alec, about, the potential to get more creative on defense, considering how vanilla we've been. And adding guys like Groot and Boogie is going to even thrust up that potential, tenfold to get even more creative. Ryan comes in with his follow-up saying, how many Ds do we keep then? And I think we all agree that it's 6. Unfortunately, I want it to be 7 just so we can keep Daryl Johnson and F.A. Obata. I just, we can't get attached to these guys. Unfortunately, it's a business and it's a crowded room. One of them is probably going to have to go. Maybe even both of them. We could be off on this and they could end up keeping 5. Who knows? And then round it off here, unfortunately, Dawn, I don't think we have any more news on Dion. I think we're all hoping for a swift recovery there. At this point, it is bleeding into the preseason a little bit. COVID impacts people differently, every person differently and unique in unique ways. So hopefully he's doing well, but he's just not cleared yet. And hopefully it doesn't impact him too much on the field physically. Really just hoping for the best when it comes to Dion and getting him back. But I would assume that he's going to be ready for week 1. I think we should all assume that. But we're going to have to be patient with this process because, like I said, everyone reacts to COVID differently and in a unique way. So we just got to be patient and, send our blessings. That's really all we can do at this point. Just hope for the best. So that'll do it for the writer's room this week. Super happy to get Zach on, the editor in chief, to represent the writer's room. I really appreciate you getting the time to open this Sunday night up. Hopefully we can get you back soon before the regular season and after some of these preseason games, so we can get some more opinions on things that are actually happening on the field, not what we're reading on our phones. But we're getting there, guys. We're so getting there. Yeah, we're under a week away. Friday the 13th is our first preseason game. I didn't know that. Hopefully nothing bad happens. I'm knocking all over wood right now. Yeah, getting excited though. Hope you guys are. Season's getting close. Feels like football season. Hope you guys are getting your fantasy advice in. Fantasy's starting up soon. I got to get my drafts, my big boards ready, all that stuff.
Always.
So I wish everyone luck on that endeavor, because that's always a can of worms. But for me, Alec, and Zach, this is the writer's room. Go Bills.
Go Bills.
Go Bills.